Well, good evening. Jim Marshall. Thank you for attending tonight. I also would like to thank Big Knob Fire and Rescue for letting us use their truck bay. Hopefully they won't have a call and get all full of diesel smoke in there. But it's a beautiful building, and I thank them and thank you for your service too. Generally, when I have a town hall, we really don't know what to expect as far as turnout and questions. I'll speak a little bit to get started, and then we'll take some questions and see where we are. I have Gina Kane from my office, who's my office manager. Our main office is in Chippewa Township with a satellite in Midland, and we have an office in Zionopel by appointment if necessary. The 14th district is in Beaver and Butler counties. It goes from Midland, Beaver County to Zionopel and Butler. And they're really about the two downtowns or the two boroughs with business and sidewalks that we have. A lot of the rest of the 14 is townships such as this, a little more rural, some farming, and it is still a pretty diverse district. Again, it's in two counties, and for the first 8 years I served, it was entirely in one county. So it's a little different now in two, and if I'm fortunate enough to be re-elected, I think 3 more times, maybe the map will change again. Let's see. But I'm grateful to have the opportunity to serve, and I enjoy public service. Some people say, well, what's it like to be a politician? You're a politician. I say, I'm really a public servant. And I really believe that I work for the taxpayers, and I try my best to bridge between residents and the state government, try to resolve situations when possible, introduce legislation if necessary, work on repeals of existing laws if necessary. So I look at it as there's two specific and different parts of being state representative. One is the constituent service, which we do in the office and which we will do tonight. If you have questions and we can answer that tonight, or if there's information we can provide you, we can do that. And it could be anything from PennDOT questions to rent rebates, a multitude of state issues. And that, I believe that constituent service is important, and I learn a lot interacting with people in the office and interacting at town halls such as this. So I see a great value in having these. I feel that as a representative of the people, you need to have an idea of what people are thinking. Not everyone's available 9 to 4 during the day, and people sometimes want to meet in the evenings, and people talk to me at the grocery store and wherever I am, and I value that. I appreciate that. Anytime I have the opportunity to serve and to help, I want to do that. I still am a volunteer firefighter, although I was testifying to Big Knob. It's been years since I've gone out on a call. I still get them on my phone. We used to have pagers. I get a text message of where the fire is. And, time is precious, and I really don't have that opportunity. And I'm not getting any younger as well. Although I did learn from DCED across the whole Commonwealth, the average age for volunteer firefighters is 56. So if you think about that, there's a lot of guys with experience, guys and ladies with experience out there serving, but they need young volunteers. So I encourage people all the time, take a look at volunteering. It's educational, it's interesting, and you're helping save your community tax dollars down the road. If every municipality had to have paid service, it would be very expensive. So the volunteers save taxpayers a lot of money, and they have a lot of valuable equipment and they take the time to be trained. So if you can't volunteer, then get to know them and see how you can help out. I'm sure they'd appreciate it. Sometimes people say I'm uncomfortable because I might not fit in, but you would, trust me. I mean, it's somebody's family member is a volunteer firefighter. You might not even know. So I encourage you. So other than constituent service, there's the legislative part of being a state legislator. And I think that I've really grown into that. When I first started, I was a forklift operator for a small company, and I knew about material handling, moving something from here to there. I knew enough about the business world, seeing what the owners of the company went through, and I was able to apply some of that early on. One of the first bills we discussed in committee was an electronic bill of lading, and the staff people said, "Anybody know what a bill of lading is?" And I'm like, "Yeah, like a truck manifest. You want to do it electronically on an email instead of handwritten or triplicate or however else you're doing it before." So, there are times when you don't need to be a lawyer or a CPA or whatever type of professional, and you can still be a public servant. So as I've been there now for 11 years and progressed through a few different committees, I tried, last session I tried appropriations. I was on that for 2 years, and it was fulfilling yet consuming, and it's basically vote on every bill that comes through because they have a fiscal note or not, and you still have to vote on them. It takes up a lot of time, and it's a big investment, and I think it takes a certain skill set, and I wasn't comfortable in appropriations, so I said, I'm going to try something else. But I've been in transportation for quite a while. I really feel connected in that. Most of the legislation that I have this year is transportation related, and typically somebody will come up to me with an issue and say, why is this? Why can't it be that? And one of the first bills that I ever had signed into law was a bill from the township in Beaver County. The township wanted to buy used fire apparatus, and they ran their own fire department. I don't know how New Sewickley does it, but this township said, we're buying the equipment. It's going to be for the fire company, but we have to go out for bid for used equipment, but if we're at an auction, we just want to buy it. So we changed the law to make it easier for municipalities to buy used equipment at auctions or from another municipality or fire service. And I think it's been helpful. It's more fluid, and it's timely for the municipalities to be able to do that. A lot of legislation, I get ideas from the district and for people to come to me. One of the bills that I'm working on now, transportation related, is about the width of tractor trailers. And I haven't really thought about it much. When you look at them going down the road, even if you see them parked around, you don't necessarily think about the width so much. Sometimes the length comes into question. But I understood that PennDOT recognizes 96 inches as the standard width for trailers, and it's 8 foot across. And for about 10 years, no one's made 96-inch trailers. They make 102s. And most of the trailers out there are 8 foot 6 inches, not 8 foot. So, I have a legislation for PennDOT to change their standard to 102s. I think that it's consumer friendly because all the companies out there that have those are selling goods, and any costs that they have generally they pass through the consumers. So I think to me it makes sense. It's just changing with the market, what's out there. And it's not a real interesting bill, I guess. There's probably not a lot of people signing on to it, but It's not about the weight, it's not about the type of truck, it's just about accepting what I believe the standard width is now. The transportation, the nuts and bolts, the infrastructure, I appreciate that. I like to do that. I'm very involved in that committee. I'm also on the Veteran Affairs and Emergency Preparedness Committee, and it deals with not only veteran issues, but any issue related to EMS, fire service, police service, anything related to 911. So it's a committee that we get to work with veterans and firefighters a lot. And some of that is what tax changes could be made to be a greater incentive for volunteers to decide to invest in volunteering for fire companies. And some are basically helping to recognize the service that veterans have put in, and not necessarily to reward them, which they should be, but at least acknowledge their service and help them to have a basic lifestyle. There's so many challenges that our veterans, especially our disabled veterans, face. Also on the Liquor Control Committee, which is new to me, one of the bills that I passed a few years ago went through that committee before I was on it. But I came across a situation where Fallston Borough was considering merging with Patterson Township. And what would happen, Patterson Township's a dry township, Fallston has liquor licenses and bars in it. What would happen in that merger? So after discussing with the elected officials from both communities, Patterson was accepting the business, the licenses that Fallston already had, but really didn't want any new ones. So I crafted the law so that if a dry township and a wet township merged, the existing establishments would be grandfathered in, and those licenses could be sold, that no other licenses would come in, and both were satisfied. It came to an election at the polls, and Patterson voted to merge, and Fallston voted not to. So I basically went to meetings for 2 years with DCED and elected officials from both. When it got to the ballot, it just didn't happen. So I think it was a good opportunity. I think that there's oftentimes there's value for municipalities to merge. I think that it would have been a value for Fallston to have done that, but ultimately it's a local choice. And I think that's 9 out of 10 times I'm with the local choice. And, having municipalities make their decisions, having school boards make their decisions, and not having Harrisburg make every decision for them, just like we don't want Washington, D.C. to make every decision for us. So that law is out there. If another dry and wet decide to merge, it could be beneficial for them. So I did give you the distinct advantage of facing this way now that the sun's going down. So it's like we're in a dark auditorium now. I can't see anybody out there. I'm sure that'll be in a cloud. Other committees I'm on are the Environmental Resources and Energy Committee. It's one that I enjoy very much. I'm the chair of a subcommittee. It's Parks and Forests, which I really enjoy. I think that our state parks are an asset. I think they're a value for the Commonwealth. And I would prefer that they be left as is and be enjoyed as is. We had a bill last year that would allow groups to come in and develop our state parks and forests with golf courses and other enemies, I probably should say. I voted against, and ultimately the majority voted against that. I think that'll probably come up again because some people really feel that that's a good private investment in state government and that we should have golf courses in state parks. So I just don't agree with that. So
Would that be similar to what West Virginia's doing?
that could be. I think
I know
I've
they
heard
have golf
cases.
courses and quite a few resorts like the Federal Jackson Resort.
Yeah, there's probably a lot of cases where something like that could be an improvement. Maybe Presque Isle would be somewhere you would do that, so you could actually have lifeguards and restaurants and things like that. But I think that Raccoon's excellent the way it is, and Bald Eagle's excellent the way it is. I would just be concerned about, carte blanche changes to our existing parks. But I found that every time I vote for an issue, either yes or no, I do generate a conversation with someone. So that's important too. I had a conversation at our last town hall with a plumber who disagreed with a recent vote to have plumbers licensed in Pennsylvania. And I thought that being that it's a highly professional job that involves health and safety, and you're connecting freshwater inlets and connecting wastewater outlets in homes, that you want someone, a licensed professional. This particular plumber disagreed with me, and I told him I'd take his thoughts into consideration. And there's times where I've developed a different opinion after discussing with stakeholders. And generally, I do try to reach out. When we have a towing bill, I've called local towers. The plumber bill, actually, I did call Reno Brothers in Beaver County, and asked them about it, and as well as other groups. But basically, we make decisions, and we're all just folks too. And sometimes we make the wrong decision. Sometimes we make the right decision. Sometimes, and I've always said, fortunately, our laws aren't the ones that are carved in stone. Those laws we follow first, but then the laws that we write on paper, we need to follow. They're in paper, so we can change them. We can update them when necessary. So I always look forward to a conversation or discussion about how we're doing things right, or if we're doing things wrong, and how can we improve that. Committee work is valuable and interesting, and that's a big part of getting the legislation moved started. There's also informal caucuses that House members can join. Sometimes I will list them. I didn't bring it with me tonight, but it's a wide list. Anything you can imagine. There's a firefighter caucus. There's a caucus for community colleges, which I'm the co-chair of that. There's a caucus for just about any issue, bicycling, motorcycling. There's a caucus for every type of fuel source. I'm currently a member of the Nuclear Caucus. It was recently formed. I've had a few people question me, because of the letters that have been going around, the postcards that have been going around about a nuclear bailout. And I've said, well, there is no nuclear bailout. Postcards are being sent out by the gas industry because they don't want competition. And so other states, and I think West Virginia, I think Ohio, I think other states have had laws, tax incentives out to so-called bail out the nuclear energy, nuclear industry. And yeah, I believe they're struggling, but it's a market too. And there's, with affordable natural gas being more available, there are energy providers being built. There's new electric generation, gas fired being built. So, as long as we're not subsidizing the gas fired ones, then we probably shouldn't be subsidizing any. I think natural gas, coal, and nuclear can compete. Certainly, coal has been on downward trend, natural gas is moving up, and nuclear's a pretty big chunk. Now, if we didn't lose them as a provider, we could face serious issues in the wintertime with electric generation. And I really don't believe that alternative energy is there yet in Pennsylvania. Like a night like tonight, you're not going to get too many wind turbines going. And solar is just not quite there yet, and it's heavily subsidized, and I think wind is as well. But nuclear is still important. But I don't see any bailout legislation in the near future. But it's a newly formed caucus, and I think we've had an organizational meeting. That's it. Also on a steel caucus, way back in the 80s, I was a steel worker before they all left. I was fortunate enough to work at B&W and then Hydro when I was young and able, and I learned a lot while I was there. If Hydro still existed, they'd be threading oil well tubing for our industries around here. They left in around 82 or 83. And, never came back. Now that property's for sale. I know Rochester Township would like to market it, and they'd like some better highway connections to it. But property is challenging. I'd rather reuse the brownfield site than to tear up green space out in a township that doesn't have any infrastructure. I think that, to me, when you have either downtowns or industrial sites that have water and sewer, electric, and three-phase electric, and every option available for business, then those sites should be marketed and better utilized. I think that allow townships to remain townships. A lot of times that's why people live there, have a little more space and be able to do what they want with the land they live on. So I guess we'll go into some questions now, and then if we need to, I can just talk more about what's going on in Harrisburg. Do that? We'll start with questions. Okay.
I would like to know if the legislature will be considering open primaries. We need open primaries. We need to appoint judges, not elect them. We need term limits, and we need to reduce the legislature. I've been hearing that since, I hate to tell my age, but I'm 76.
No way.
I started voting at 21. I voted in every election except this primary because I got so fed up with both political parties. I registered independent. A lot of people are registering independent because they've had enough to hear. It doesn't matter if the Democrats or the Republicans are in. We get screwed either way. We have the highest gasoline tax. We have the second highest amount of legislatures. We are the fifth most corrupt government, the state government. Wow. And part of that is because we have voted in judges instead of electing them. Instead of appointing them. I'm sorry, I got that. And that's what my agenda, that's what I'm always complaining about. So from 21 to 76, it just gets worse.
Well, if things don't change, then you need to complain. So
I do.
Don't ever apologize for
I
that.
have complained to
It's
you.
fine.
I complained to Senator Vogel. I complained to Casey. I complained to everybody that will listen, and nothing ever gets done.
I like when people complain because it's motivating. I think things are getting done. We voted to reduce the size of the General Assembly.
What about Jeremy?
We'll get to that.
Are you supporting the thing of redistrict for you?
Fair districts, yes.
Okay,
I'm
thank
opposed to
you.
those. Because that's one, fair districts. There's a group going around that would like more citizen involvement in drawing up the districts, redistricting or reapportionment, it's called. There's a House bill, I believe it's 722. I've co-sponsored it. I think citizens should be more involved in apportionment. And I do have a newsletter coming out, and I'm stating that in the newsletter. So just to verify that I support that. I looked at a congressional district map today, and I thought it was peculiarly shaped. So I like districts that are compact and that, you know, they can't always be in the same county. Sometimes you have to cross county lines. Some of our districts, we have a district in north central PA. I think it's as big as Delaware, one house district, so it's a big area. But around here, I think you could do it without splitting municipalities. When I was first elected, New Sewickley was split. I had 2, and in District 10 had 1 and 3. So
Well, I understand this bill will limit they will have 11 independent people from a lotto pool. Like, they can apply, it won't be the legislation, and you're only allowed to cross off 6. So if they have 146 citizens apply to be on this committee, the legislation can only get rid of 6, and then they can appoint. They will appoint 4 Democrats, 4 Republicans, and I believe, no, it's 7. I might have that mixed up, but I know there'll be 3 independents, 4 Democrats, and 4 Republicans that will be on this gerrymander. But they cannot be related to anybody in legislation. They cannot have relatives or anything that have been within 5 years have been in government. Now, do you support that?
it's all the same bill.
Yes, that's what the bill is. Okay, thank you.
Okay, so that's the gerrymandering.
Okay.
The size of the General Assembly, yes, I voted for it. It'll come up for a vote again this year or next year. I'll vote for it. The governor, whatever governor, will probably sign it. It'll then go to the ballot. So every citizen can vote. Yes, reduce it, or no, don't reduce it. So we have moved on that.
One of the primaries for independent.
I don't know. I haven't really developed a solid opinion, so I'm looking forward to why you want to move the primary.
Because I can't vote unless I am, New Hampshire has it. A lot of states have it. We don't. And I cannot vote in the primary, and that's the most important election because you get the person on the ballot. As it is, now I supported you, and I was a registered Democrat. I couldn't vote for you in the primary. I wrote you in, but it didn't count.
Well,
Same way with if I wanted, if I like a Democrat, I should be able to go vote for him. If I like a Republican, I should be able to go vote for him in the primary.
I'll be glad to talk elections with you all evening, just not my election. Because that's not, I think that's kind of crossing the line, because this is a legislative event. So thanks for your support, but I'm not going to talk about my election.
Okay.
Elections, I don't know, I think, I've heard some people say that they feel in an open primary, if Democrats are allowed to vote for Republicans, and Republicans are allowed to vote for Democrats, that you could theoretically load up the primary with, say, a Democrat-leaning Republican and a Democrat, and then the Republicans then wouldn't feel they had a voice in the general. Now, if there was a way that an independent registered person could vote for anyone, I think that sounds more appealing than just a wide
Well,
open.
we have somewhere where you can vote in the primary if it's an independent body.
Yeah.
Then
I'm going to
just
talk.
vote. Both Democrats and Republicans.
I'm going to talk to the state committee staff and see what other opinions and what other, maybe somebody has some bills proposed already for that. I need to learn more about open primaries. So I'm not against you. I'm not entirely for it. I think independents should have more of a voice.
Definitely.
I just think
We're
that,
becoming more and more because people are
and
fed up
people are
with
fed
parties
up.
up to here.
Agreed. Okay, so that's two issues. There was one about term limits. So I'm gonna give you my opinion, but it's not my opinion as state representative, it's Jim Marshall's opinion. Because I have to really, sometimes I might have a different opinion than the majority of the district. And I can't let that override the district's opinion. You know what I mean? Like most of you might say term limits. And then I would have to vote for term limits because most of you said that. And I stay true to voting with the district. Term limits, on one hand, we have a term limit because every 2 years I have to run. So it's not like you're in like judges. I don't like retention. If you come to me and say, let's get rid of retention, I'm all on board.
One of 7 states is
Yeah.
still left.
All right, well, we'll jump right into that because, yes, I agree with you. And yes, there is a bill that we should not elect judges, appoint them. I can't remember the sponsor, but it's basically about having more credibility, I think, in the judge that we're electing because we're basing it on their experience and not just on what's on the ballot. So yes, I'm with you. So I think yes, I'm with you is 3 out of 4 so far. It's not too bad. Term limits, I've thought about introducing a bill for a 12-year term limit. And I thought, well, that should be enough. If everybody was at 12 years, the turnover would be greater and we'd get new opinions in there. But what if there was someone that you really believed in? And not someone who's there to work for a lifetime, but somebody that's there to serve for as long as people, elect them. There might be someone that you wish you could re-elect. Because we're putting a term limit in because there's some folks that we just can't take anymore. I think we're just giving the voters a disservice for somebody that's exceptional. So I'm not quite ready for term limits. If we could have a term limit for committee chair people, yes, I would do that. So I think some of them in quite a long time, and they're never going to have a different opinion of what they have now. I think that there's value in having new people. I think if I were creating the rules for the General Assembly, I would say the committees will form, and when they meet, each committee will elect their chairperson. I think that would be a great way to do it. Instead of leadership electing the chairperson based on seniority, I think having each committee electing their chairperson seems like a smart way to go. Retention, yeah, I think judges should just run for re-election. Or, like you said, if we were able to get in the appointed rule and then
Appointed and vetted, just like the Supreme Court.
I support that, and I'm co-sponsor. So I'm considering term limits. It's one of those issues where we're letting the bad apples create our decisions because we don't want somebody in there forever who's going to keep people reelected. Like whoever, everybody has their person. You might say this person been there too long, they need to go. The one good thing I can say, since I've been elected, and I wish I had this figure accurately for YouTube or whatever we're on, the turnover has been tremendous in the House of Representatives. Probably at least 60% or more in 11 years. And I think it's the voters got the message out.
Yeah, they do. They vote out and vote in, and nothing else gets changed. It seems, like I say, and another
Well, then-
thing, we have the highest gas tax in the nation.
Well, that's not going to change.
Why?
Yeah, that's a good question. Why not?
Because in Pennsylvania, all the revenue for infrastructure is collected through user fees. So your vehicle registration, your license plates, everything come out related. That's the revenue that goes into fixing roads and bridges. Other states use money from the general fund. They use other taxes to support roads and bridges. We don't. The other thing that Pennsylvania has, we have more roads and bridges than our neighboring states combined. Maybe we have too many. Maybe there should be state roads. I was just on a state road with the manager, PennDOT manager at District 11. I said, I really think that this should be a township road. And he said, I agree with you. Would the township take it? Probably not. It probably should. There is a turnback program that the state has that townships can choose to take a state road and maintain it themselves. They do get liquid fuel money to maintain that road. And I think there are many roads that aren't really traffic connectors to major arteries that really should be a state road.
Well, couldn't they change the way they portion the money for instead of taking it all from the gas tax? I mean, there's other things.
I think
What happened to all the money from the cigarette industry? We had like 9 billion or something that came into Pennsylvania. Where'd it go?
It didn't come in as a lump sum. It comes in as annual payments. Most of the money is earmarked for certain things like smoking cessation, quitting smoking. There are groups.
That?
Yeah, it's social services are expensive. And
Yeah,
a lot of that money from the lawsuit goes into getting people to quit bad habits. And some of that goes to organizations, even in Beaver County. They come to me and they say, would you put up these stop smoking pamphlets for people to take? So, sure. I think everybody should see this information. So, maybe there is some other revenue stream that could go into roads and bridges, but the facts are we have a lot of bridges and roads. We have the geology in Pennsylvania, there's a lot of clay. It's difficult to build roads on. A lot of the roads that we had started out as dirt paths. People added a little bit of gravel over the years. Some roads we call tarred and chipped, they call it seal coat. But roads are tarred and chipped over gravel that's been on there for multiple decades that was really never any base put in. So if you really want to do a road right, like they're redoing 376 again, you have to dig out all that clay because it's the freeze thaw in Pennsylvania is also a huge factor. It moves the base, if there is any. It moves the road surface. If you look at a lot of roads around here, it's certainly a hilly state as well. If you have a road down in a ravine, water's going to get in there, freeze, pop. You get potholes. It's expensive to maintain that infrastructure, and it's all relies on what you call the gas tax and revenue from license plates and registration. And the more vehicles that are out there that are more fuel efficient, less dollars are coming in. When electric vehicles are more prevalent, I don't know. There's just
West Virginia has the same climate and ravines and that we have.
they do. I would say they'd have.
How do they pay for their roads? How do the other states pay for their roads? That should be looked into to reduce the people. Like I said, they're fed up. A lot of them go to Ohio to buy their gas, but it's cheaper. And it's cheaper in Zillionoka or somewhere than it is,
Yeah, the quick fill in Zilly is usually cheaper than
But
somebody in
that's
Beaver
not
County. But
right.
that's not the gas tax. That's just the
No, but
market.
something just isn't right with this
Well, there's discussion
I
about.
better shut up and let somebody else say
Oh, I
it.
know, we're good. So there's a proposal. There's, most of the gasoline we have here in Beaver County and Pittsburgh region comes from Philadelphia. Comes in a
There's your
pipeline.
answer right there.
Because they're,
There's your answer.
it's coming,
Corrupt government, it started there.
coming in a pipeline. So that's the most economical way to get it here. It's better than trucks and trains because it's underground and it's, you know, it's in an environment that there's less likely to be accidents than if it's out on the surface somewhere. So there's a proposal to reverse the direction of that pipeline and to ship material from Pittsburgh east over as far as Altoona. And the PUC is going to look at that. There's people on both sides of the issue. People say, well, we want to continue getting this fuel all the way from Philadelphia. Where's our source if we don't? Well, the Midwest generates fuel as well, gasoline, diesel, fuel oil, and they could provide, we believe, less expensive fuel for the Pittsburgh region than having a pipeline from Philadelphia. So we'll see what the PUC does. That could impact prices. The other thing that impacts the prices right here, the EPA has a mandate that in a urban area, we have to reduce smog. So back whenever the General Assembly said, well, we're going to reduce smog by having lower emissions on personal vehicles. So that's when all these vehicles have to start getting catalytic converters and burn cleaner to be manufactured to burn cleaner. So to meet that, we have a more expensive, cleaner burning gasoline just in the Pittsburgh market. The boundary of that, it's a circle. The boundary of that market goes through Elwood City. So there's one street in Elwood City that has emission on their cars. The other side of the street doesn't have emissions. The more expensive, cleaner gasoline is just in this area, not out. Possibly Butler's outside of that circle. Maybe that's why it's cheaper there in Brazil.
Why is that when Beaver County's population has not been growing, probably decreasing from the looks of things? Butler County is growing like crazy. Does that law ever get reviewed? I don't believe Beaver County is near the polluting county that Butler County is today.
It should be reviewed, and Senator Vogel and I both have legislation that would repeal that cleaner burning fuel in the Pittsburgh region.
Well, Jim, when that law was first made, I believe we still had steel mills running.
It did.
And Beaver County was a very high polluting county. I'm not so sure that that's the case anymore. I don't know what the cracker plant's going to do to that, but without the cracker plant right now, you don't see a lot of pollution in that county.
I agree, and I think it shouldn't be all put on private vehicles' emissions. And I think, other than that, like you mentioned Ohio before, Ohio doesn't have inspections for vehicles. And, you know, we have inspections, emissions, all these extra costs. I think we should have, how many cars pass? It's a number, I think it's greater than 98% of vehicles pass.
For emission inspections?
For emission, and for safety inspections, but certainly emissions inspection. So I think Senator Vogel had a bill that
You did.
cars that are older than 5 years would apply. Newer cars would need to be inspected the first 5 years. I think that's common sense. These cars are going to pass anyway. Why are we going through the expense of testing brand new cars?
Well, we spend, most people are charging up to $40 for emission inspection. Takes them 2 seconds to do. I know they have to buy a lot of expensive equipment to do that, but all they really got to do is read a computer that takes about 3 minutes. And it's ludicrous. You pay $22 or $25 for them to pull wheels and actually do physical work, and you pay $40 for a 3-minute job. And I do these things, so I'm very...
Wow,
Well, I don't do it professionally. I'm retired. but I do work in a shop where the guy's kind of sick and I help him out. I mean, it's a 3-minute job and people are paying up to 40 bucks for it. It's ridiculous. It's just a ripoff to the consumer.
My 2011 pickup's got 137,500 miles on it, emissions, and yeah, it's too much. And Senator Vogel and I both agree with you. Just
I
try to
know
get
that, Mr. Vogel had that thing out, and I couldn't believe that he got shot down on it, because it's one of the few things I've seen our government do that actually made sense. Not to be crude, I'm not trying to throw rocks or anything, but it is a very common sense thing.
I share your frustration. I do.
And it's just like, we were talking about road repairs. It seems to me that PennDOT goes out of their way to just congest traffic as much as possible. They put up cones everywhere, they restrict traffic, and you drive for weeks and you don't see anybody working. It's like, why don't we work 2 shifts on daylight hours? The bridge down here, this is the second year they're messing with that. And I don't know if you drive that road. I drove it for 40 years working at the airport. Every year after the initial newness of that highway correct, they're tearing up the road all summer. As soon as the cold weather sets in, boom, it's opened up again. But some years they'd open it up, tear 3 pieces of concrete out and leave it that way all summer.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous.
Agreed. We have 2 seasons, construction and winter.
Yeah, and either one can you get to anywhere. I know that makes poor language.
I'm hoping,
I'd rather drive in the winter than the summer with the construction, to be quite honest with you.
I hope it's better this year. I hope they finally get it done before snow flies. And
But why isn't, other states are very conscious of traffic movement. You go to Maryland and stuff, they go out of their way to seem to make things flow nice when they're doing construction. Here, nobody seems to care about the people that are paying for the construction, and that's us. And that expressway is the most ridiculous thing I personally have ever seen in my life as far as road construction. And it's year after year after year, and again, they tear it up, you see nobody working. It's ridiculous.
Security.
Well, it is, but there's no reason people can't work and make a decent living working 2 shifts.
I think
and
most
trying
of
to
the
get jobs
workers-
done quicker.
I think they sub out most of the work, so.
Well, then there's no excuse for not having
You're
manpower.
right. No excuse. That bridge should have been painted and done by now.
It should have been done last year. They seemed to go out of their way to make sure it wasn't, from me driving it and watching it.
So, while we're talking about bridges, did you see the proposed turnpike closure in September for a weekend?
Yes, it did.
They're going to close the turnpike entirely for 55 hours, and they're going to replace a bridge. Now, if they get this done, I think every other state should be looking at that. It's a terrible inconvenience for one weekend, but it beats congestion for a year. I don't know if it's possible, but they're actually going to replace a basically 4-lane bridge over Brush Creek in 55 hours.
That's one down here.
Yeah, and tear it out and put another.
I've been watching that. It's interesting.
Yeah, it is. And, there's been a lot of work on Crow's Run, and to try to get that to be a safer corridor. Really doesn't add capacity. It's not going to be bigger.
Is that still going to be 2-lane road?
Yeah, it's going to be straighter. It's going to be safer.
It would have to be straighter. I don't think it could be.
Couldn't have made it any more crooked. I think somebody said they follow a runaway horse and wagon or something. It's
A drunken cow, perhaps.
that's it. That's about as crooked as a road as I've been on. Which would be typical for Pennsylvania, right? Crooked roads. Yes.
I have a few questions
Sure.
relating to, first of all, thank you for passing the spending bill, so we can get through that. But as far as the revenue bill, is borrowing against the tobacco settlement is still considered to being a revenue stream?
It's being considered. Here's where I would be on this, and then I'd be interested to hear where you would be. If it were a pot of money, like what you said, if there was $80 billion sitting there, and we could borrow it and replace it, then I would consider it as it's a dire need to finish up the revenue we didn't, the lack of revenue for last budget, and borrow it and then find sustainable revenue or find sustainable cuts in the next budget. But it isn't a pot of money. We would have to borrow against the money we would be receiving. So we'd have to go to banks, borrow the money. You're only looking at 30 years. And to me, it's too big of a stretch. I really don't want to borrow money. I don't want to take out a mortgage to fix the problem we're in. If we could do it by emergency funding or emergency one-time cuts, I think it would be better than 30 years of borrowing.
I tend to agree with you. It's like, as a homeowner, it's like borrowing money, going to a bank to get a loan to pay my utility bills.
Or pay for buy groceries, it's the
Yes,
same
it's the
way.
same thing. I have to pay it back, so that's more of a spending budget. So are there any other new proposed tax increases or even other revenue streams being considered?
Always. There are always revenue streams being considered. What the Senate moved, and I'm a little surprised because the Senate leadership and the House leadership really didn't have a discussion about the bill that came over. The utility, the gas tax, the severance tax, and the tobacco settlement. The tobacco settlement we had kicked around, and the utility tax kind of, to me, came out of nowhere. I think basic cable tax was added to that. Some people said, well, everyone has enhanced cable when they pay taxes. And I said, everyone doesn't. If there's elderly or underemployed that just have basic cable, why would you tax that? If you wanted to do something, and you wanted to do it in broadband, which I'm not a fan of anyway, why wouldn't you increase the enhanced tax instead of taxing basic? I think taxing basic is the wrong way to go. There's some people that's their only news source, their only information. That's where they get weather, school closings. That's could be their whole world. So I would be against taxing basic cable because of that. The tax on natural gas delivered to your home used to be there. We all pay that in electric. We used to pay that in natural gas. The General Assembly voted to take that tax away some years ago, maybe when gas prices were extremely high. It's been a while. But if we repealed it, I don't see any reason to reinstate it at this point. Again, I think it's a tax on a homeowner, maybe in the greatest need, and that's their heat source. It could be their cooking source. So I would be opposed to the utility tax for natural gas in the house.
The tax that come across is, I was under the impression that was on gas coming from the wellheads.
That's a severance tax. They proposed two taxes.
Okay.
I would have to think about a severance tax. I think that if you would poll the general public supports a severance tax. Some people, I think it's the bullet point tax the natural gas industry. They're not taxed enough, or don't tax us. But I think certainly if they're in business, they're paying corporate net income tax, they're paying tax on their employees, they're paying unemployment, they're paying gasoline tax for their vehicles. I think they're paying a lot of taxes now. Why single out one industry? So I can't say absolutely I wouldn't vote for it or absolutely I would. I give everything a lot of thought before I vote on it. The
Yeah,
severance
regardless
tax,
of where you put that, or whether you tax it from the wellhead or at my meter, we still pay the bill at the end of the day.
well, true. But you talk about wellheads, it's reminding me about the royalty bill that's out there. That's another separate issue. But, severance tax, the other issue is if you're taxing one natural resource, natural gas, why would it then apply to coal, water, clay, limestone, everything you take. And then if you decide we're going to tax all of those, then I would have to say, well, what if we only do it to what are exporting? And if we're using it here for manufacturing, maybe they could, or for home heating, maybe we could have some exception for that.
Well, if you use it for manufacturing, we pay the tax only by the product anyway, so, I mean, manufacturers,
Ultimately,
they pass it along, they don't absorb anything.
well, that's what I mean, if it's used for manufacturing, maybe we give them a break, because, yeah, it's passing down to us. I mean, we're all taxpayers, everything comes down to us. But the Senate bill came over as is, I would have been a no vote. I don't think the House is going to vote on it. There are other proposals. Everyone is always under. Some members of the General Assembly would say, let's have a small increase in sales tax, because everyone pays it, wherever you are, and that's a decision you make at home. If you decide to buy a Cadillac or a GMC, are you paying more sales tax on one than the other? It comes down to enhanced versus basic, or if is there a ability to reuse items instead of being a throwaway society we become. Go think back to what our fathers and grandparents threw away. Maybe we should look at buying things that are going to last a lifetime or more, instead of buying something that's going to last 5 years or 10 years. Certainly when we're buying things, look for made in USA, and hopefully we can find things made in Pennsylvania. I just bought some composite lumber, and it was made in Fauna. So I made that decision because I wanted to buy a local product. I try to go to local hardware stores whenever possible. I sorely miss Kelly's. I love Kelly's Hardware in Beaver Falls. I sometimes go to Craig's in Brighton. I don't remember about that, but there's so much to learn there too. People that work there are generally really informed on home remedies and the tools they sell. You're not going into a big box and somebody that clearly not know anything about the product or something. So, the other revenue, back to your revenue question, sales tax is always being proposed. Income tax generally is being proposed, slight raises to that. And, some people will say, why is the burden always on the working? And, yeah, it's a challenge, but ultimately, what I found as when we're children, we rely on our parents. They do everything. They take care of us. They pay the taxes. They buy the groceries. They do everything. And then as we grow up, those parents age, and then technically we should be helping them. A lot of times it ends up that the government's helping them, and the families aren't able to, or maybe just don't. Or maybe the families have all moved away, and it's not a unit the way it used to be. But ultimately that middle group, the working age people, are taking care of children, maybe taking care of parents, but yet they were once children and they'll once be seniors, and they'll hopefully have less burden on them than they did when they were working. I'm not saying, yeah, we should make everything income-based, because you want to bring a workforce in too.
What you said, though, is exactly the opposite of what happens. If you work, and you worked all your life and paid exorbitant taxes, which a lot of us have, you retire, and I'm speaking from my own personal experience, when it comes to maybe a year or two where you have a low income and you want some services maybe other people are getting, like Obamacare handed to them for nothing, and you say, oh, you make $2,000 more, you're not qualified for anything. So the people who pay the taxes are the ones who are penalized the most when they retire. And it's pathetic, it really is, because you're not eligible for anything because we chose to be productive citizens.
True in some cases.
Oh, it's true in a lot of cases,
Well,
Jim, believe me.
Pennsylvania, at least there's not a tax on retirement
Oh,
pensions.
Pennsylvania, yeah, on the pensions and no income tax and all that, it's godsend to retirees, it really is. If you go out and really talk to people, it makes a world of difference.
I think it brings retirees back to Pennsylvania too.
Oh, I think it does, and I'm not complaining about the tax rate for that, I'm talking on the federal level, because I really haven't dealt with Pennsylvania for
I
that.
think the state of Pennsylvania does leaps and bounds for senior citizens.
You could probably make $20,000 less a year and still have more disposable income in Pennsylvania once you retire versus, like if you made 60 grand and now you're making 40 grand, your disposable income is probably higher than it was when you were working. And that is, I find that to be very true, that my disposable income is at least as good as it was when I was working. So, but then again, when I was working, I was paying very exorbitant taxes, and you get no benefit from it when you retire, other than the tax break there, but everybody gets that, whether you worked or not.
I think the best sustainable income for Pennsylvania would be to have jobs again. I think that if we can get manufacturing back, Pennsylvania, unfortunately, we lost another big one with GE Locomotive moved out of Erie. I think they're down in Texas now. They were probably 100 years in Erie, and I think that's about 500 jobs.
Did they move the motor plant too?
The locomotive,
Oh, no, the electric, didn't they have a motor plant up there where they built motors?
yeah,
I thought they did.
could be. I know it was GE Locomotive, they said. But
Yeah.
we need jobs here, we need manufacturing. So we should be able to compete with other states, with other countries, with attracting jobs. Not saying that we give the store away, but I think in part of attracting companies, and I think one of the reasons Shell looked where they did, they were looking for interstate, railroad, and river. And all that lines up well with Beaver County. And I believe that when Fortune 500s and other international companies are looking for a job site, and they're looking for interstates first, they look for international airports, interstates. I think one of the most important decisions that the federal government has made in recent history around here was naming 376 the way they did, because it was a multitude of highways, 22 and 30, and there were so many configurations of highways that when they created that loop from Route 80 to Monroeville at 376, we think of it as, it's just a name, it's just a number, it doesn't do anything. I think it puts us on the map globally. So I think that was very important to have that, to get Shell to look at us, to get any company.
What is Shell planning on using for their main transportation, do you know?
They plan to bring most of the material in by barge and most of the material out by rail. So a lot of their feedstock, though, is natural gas and brought in by pipeline.
Is the gas treatment plant up behind Seneca High School in your area?
Yes.
They're using
Mark
primary rail, right?
Excuse me? What?
They're using railroad from,
Yes.
let me see.
Yeah, I think that short lines and railroads are growing again in our area. And I'd rather move freight on rails than on highways. So I think that it's a good thing to have that option. And I think that it makes brownfields that more incentivized when there's rail service to them. I'm still surprised that the old B&W facility hasn't been really built up yet. There's a lot of the buildings have been torn down now. Most of the remediation's been done. So in our county, Corporation for Economic Development does a lot of the brownfield sites. That's not one of theirs, but they have the Hopewell Industrial Park and others. And maybe to some extent, maybe that industrial park is marketed better than some of the other sites. But, I think we really need to market Pennsylvania. Not only for industry, but tourism too. That's probably our number 2 industry. Ag tourism, very important.
We have a beautiful state, no doubt about that.
It's very diverse, geography's diverse, the population's diverse. And yes, the General Assembly is very diverse. And there's some that you might categorize in some certain segment, but you know, we have some good folks come from Philadelphia, some from Western PA and Scranton and all over. So
I agree with Philadelphia. That's where the term Philadelphia lawyer comes from. We used to have the
That's it.
distinguishing thing with Mississippi, Philadelphia was with class action suits. You know, if you wanted to sue with Philadelphia and Mississippi, they were the 2 places you went. And on that subject, I just want to say something. Is Pennsylvania considering suing the manufacturer of OxyContin like the other states are doing?
should be. I think
Are
that
they doing that? Because the guy went from not much money to becoming a trillionaire, marketing it that it wasn't addictive. The doctors put it out there it wasn't addictive. And people got addicted. And
I will
then
check
they-
with our Auditor General,
That should, I
Attorney
mean,
General.
Ohio is, I think Rhode Island, I think even Colorado. Is when they're suing the manufacturer of it because it was misrepresented. And they've proven that the people misrepresented the addiction when they sold it to the people,
Well,
dispensers.
we absolutely need to do everything we can to get
Well,
prescription drug
We should do
industry.
like we did with the cigarette.
We need to get those off the market. So another question about revenue.
Yeah, I just have a few more. Basically, they're related to local property taxes, school taxes, things that the state can do to help us not increase the taxes as much. As one of the things, before I get to that, is the school basic subsidies, will they be delayed if there are no revenue bills passed? Or,
The spend plan is out. There were increases to basic ed in that.
will we receive the subsidies if there is no revenue bill? And we are
You
out
will.
there, we're gonna get them, but is the cash gonna flow to the district?
The cash will continue to flow to the districts at least till September or October.
Okay.
Yeah.
And the other things, as far as property taxes, is there charter school funding? Do you see that being tackled this year?
We tried to get a charter school reform package through, passed it out of the House, couldn't get the Senate to move it. We're going to try that again.
Because you realize how much, each school district is paying over and above what their actual costs are.
Yeah, I actually proposed an idea that the schools would use a regional median per student cost instead of each school district's cost, so that, like, if our regional median was, say, $3,000 per student, then the cyber charters would have to use $3,000 and not.
Otherwise, it's 10 and 22,000. And for a regular education student, it's 22. That's for free.
That's for free.
And we're lower, we're one of the lower ones paying. There are schools like Maricopa paying close to $30,000 for each special education student going to a charter school, and they can't afford it.
And I think we need greater accountability on what parameters exist to qualify for a special education student. Because I think that there could be some that, may not actually have special
So you
needs.
think the House is going to do something
The
this?
House will continue,
Thank you.
the House will continue to work on charter reform.
Return of plan fund.
I don't know that it's going to come back.
Ever?
I can't say for sure. If I want to be,
Yeah.
I've supported anyone that's been through, I think, E or F on Plan-Con. We're not going to start anyone new, but anyone who's gone from A to E, they should be funded.
We're looking, our district, we can't, it's going to cost a minimum of $20 million to renovate the high school, which there's holes in windows, roofs are air's coming in, all the HVAC needs replaced. And to do that, it would be a 12 tax increase in the payer should pay off, to just assume that. And there's no way that we want to be tax the taxpayers that, without the plan support. I don't think referendum will pass, but,
Right.
to go.
Well, if everyone doesn't know, Plan Con is money from the Department of Education that goes towards repaying
The debt.
the debt
Renovation.
for renovation and construction, debt that you have receipts for.
Yes.
So it's very transparent. And then each school district has to go through several sections of Plan Con to get from design to completion. And I think that a district that has gone more than halfway there, that program should continue. But if there's not revenue to start new, I don't know what's going to happen.
Do you anticipate any property tax reform in the future?
I always anticipate that. We had House Bill 76, and there's part of it I didn't like. It really affects Beaver County. And, so I opposed 76. I think would be harmful to Beaver County residents. It might be better for folks in Lancaster or further east. But, if you decide to go eliminate property taxes and go to sales tax, increase the sales tax, broaden the sales tax, then you would immediately shift gears and start with a new system. So in an area that has a lot of retail, a lot of business, a lot of industry, that's probably a good idea. In a more bedroom community, it's a bad idea. The worst part of 76 was if any school district that currently had debt when the bill was enacted, they would be able to collect the property tax and the new tax until the debt was paid off. So if you had somewhere where like Ambridge that had I think a $90 million school building, I don't know if it's going to be paid off in my lifetime. So those folks are going to be paying property tax plus sales tax and broadened sales tax. So I was opposed to 76. I would be supportive of other options. Now there is a bill that would allow each district to decide if they're going to use property tax or entirely or use portions of sales or income and let that be a local decision. I would like to learn more about that, but I'd like to learn what the districts thought about that too.
When you don't have a business, I don't think.
Yeah, if you don't have a business, I don't know how you could.
Thank you.
Thank you, yes.
What about the lottery? I know it goes to senior citizens, I'm a senior citizen, but Ohio uses half for education and half for senior citizens. Now, as a senior citizen, I would not, take some of the things that they offer because I'm still active. But is it being policed enough? Because I know, I don't want to name the home, but it's a senior citizen. It's not a home, I mean like park. And they'll go in, everyone, and then tear out kitchens. They're still perfectly good kitchens and put in new kitchens, whether the people wanted it or not. It's just the money's there and that's what they do. And I was just thinking, education is maybe getting cut. And that, why couldn't they split it? Half to the seniors, if they want to keep the seniors for like the dark bus and the things and people in nursing homes and that, and half for education, or for school districts.
That's always an option that could be considered. I think initially the lottery was based on senior citizens because we saw the demographics. I wasn't there, obviously. But the General Assembly saw the demographics were going to Pennsylvania's increasing number of seniors and how can we offer services, and that's where we came up with the lottery.
But there's a lot of duplications too, and that's what they say. You don't need a new kitchen, why do you go in and put all new kitchens in the building, whether they need them or not? You know, they're still 4 or 5 years old, they go in and give them all new kitchens.
I'll have to learn more about that. It's a specific, we call it a silo. Silo, revenue goes in, and they budget the same revenue every year. We need this for this fund. And businesses apply for that money. So if all the money isn't granted out, we'll say, there could be a surplus. And we have a group of members outside of the appropriations team, just a group of members that have been meeting the last 3 weeks, looking at those specific issues in revenue to see if there are funds that we could use to balance the budget. I believe that there are. I think it's still tax dollars. I think that it's not going to be detrimental to the specific silos that they're in. I think that those programs will continue. But it'd be like if we took our paycheck and put it in our checking account every month, and then every year, if they're lucky enough to have any balance, put some in the savings. And then decades later, we have a nice savings account. Well, that's, I guess, utopia. But in some areas in revenue, there are dollars that have been collecting. We think that we could use them, and even use them in the same specific line item to basically take from that savings, put it right into their line item, so that we can balance the budget. And it's one time. Some people might say they like to use the term one-time gimmick. I don't think it's a gimmick. I think it's getting out of the problem we have right now. And we have to look for, like I said before, either sustainable revenue to meet the programs we have, or streamline, reduce costs. I know the governor's introduced plans of streamlining parts of government to hopefully work better. I think corrections and parole is a great idea for that. I'm not sure that drug and alcohol and aging would be one I would combine. The governor proposed that. I think that in the time we're in, we really need somebody specific on drug and alcohol use. But that's probably a long answer to your question. We're always looking at
I understand.
revenue streams. And I think it's interesting when you talk about broadening sales tax. Because I think when sales tax was first issued, it was pretty general, pretty broad. And then over the years, things get exemptions. I'm guilty for an exemption. I was pushing for an exemption on sales of aircraft parts, so that planes and people that own planes in Beaver County, either individually or businesses, would service them in Pennsylvania instead of flying to Maryland, Ohio, Delaware, New Jersey, New York. Every state around us has exemption for maintenance and parts for aircraft. We had an exemption for rotary aircraft, so helicopters had that. And that was basically there because there was a Sikorsky plant out in eastern PA. And, they do a lot of business, employ a lot of people. Around here, Washington County Airport, Beaver County Airport, these little airports are actually like little business incubators. I think that there's value in them, and why should somebody jump in a plane and fly to another state? Just save some money. Let's fix it here. So if we went and took all those exemptions away, then that exemption would go away. Are there some that I think could be broader? I mean, we have certain types of shoes. I think certain types of shoes are exempt from sales. A lot of clothing is exempt. But some type have sales tax. So Our tax system in general, in Pennsylvania and obviously Washington DC, is convoluted and complicated. We need experts to help us with it. It shouldn't be that way. But in general, I'm always open to discuss a better way to have sustainable revenue for services going, but also to look at reducing costs so it's not overburdensome. It's challenging, it really is. And it's interesting the topics that we discuss, and you learn who's for this and who's opposed to that. And you'll get groups that might be very different philosophically or ideologically on an issue that agree on, they're together for this issue. So it's a learning experience. I learn every day. I think everyone should be learning every day. And part of us as residents, citizens, we should be learning about who's on the ballot, who's the judge, who's the school board member, who's the state rep or senator, U.S. senator. Let's learn who that person is before we go out, write them in, push the button, pull the lever, whatever. That's another thing. Voting all across the state is different. You know, we have the touchpads, and some people still have a lever you pull. But you need to learn about who's on the ballot and support those that support us, and to be educated when we vote. It's difficult when
I
you
never
get.
figured that in civics class. I don't even know if
They don't have civics
class.
We even had a bill to make civics be taught again.
What about correction? Kept writing.
Cursive.
Cursive writing.
We should use it.
Yeah, because you have to sign a contract. You go up and you ask somebody, and then a kid to sign a contract. I never learned that. You print.
I think basic education has left a lot of basic living skills off the table we need to get back to. And I think, unfortunately, the governor and I agree on this. There's too much time on testing and not enough time on results. So I think that, we let the teachers teach and do our best to keep the best ones in those schools and hope that we get a good product coming out. Everything is like a fish going upstream. Everything you get is against that student, all the way through from economics, peer pressure, to, you name it, bullying. We try our best to eliminate what we can. I'm as opposed to bullying as anybody I can imagine. And it's harmful. And we should do everything we can to eliminate that and to educate our students in a peaceful setting. That the teachers have their hands full.
Oh, I would love to teach.
You think about it. Someone told me, it was one of the best analogies that I've heard. A friend of mine's a teacher, her husband owns a small business. And she said he gets raw material in every day. And he can reject it based on quality. I don't have that ability. So I'll get raw material in. That child could be in his PJs, may not have had breakfast, may not have a coat. I'll do whatever I can to help them. But, I have to get through that before I can get them to learn. So I take my hat off to anybody in education. That's a tough deal. I haven't been watching the time. Is it? It's 8:01. If there's no more questions, we're going to wrap up. All right?
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate you being here, taking the time. And call us. I'll do my best to call back or email.
So you're off the subject. Very good.
We're here to serve you. You're our employer. I come up every 2 years to be assessed on my abilities. I hope that I meet your expectations, and I do my best every day. So thank you.